If you've ever been disillusioned, disappointed, or discouraged in your search for love, and you know there has to be a better way to find the healthy, soul-filling love you've always longed for, then you've discovered the podcast for you. I know, as Ken's work personally has led me to find the love of my life. So here's your host of Deeper Dating, Ken Page.
Welcome to the Deeper Dating Podcast. I'm Ken Page. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm the author of the best-selling book, Deeper Dating, your host on this podcast, and the creator of the Deeper Dating Intensive. And today, I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to share my personal, spiritual, romantic, and sexual journey with you. This is going to have a few parts, probably 2 parts. And I've never shared this before, and I'm excited about it. So before I jump in, I just want to say that if you're interested in this deeper dating approach to finding healthy love, just go to deeperdatingpodcast.com. There you can get free gifts, you can join my mailing list, you can get transcripts of every episode, you can get my beautiful free ebook, The 5 Keys to Deeper Intimacy, and you can just become a part of my learning community. So with that, I'm going to jump in. So this is my story, and this is a story about my sexual and spiritual and romantic journey. So I'm going to start pretty young. I was a little kid, and I was a gay kid, and I ached for a connection. There was a star that was above the house next door to me, and I would pray to that star that I could find friends, that I could find a community. I didn't know all of what that meant at that point, but I knew that I wanted it, and I knew that I was lonely, and I knew that I didn't fit in. As a gay kid, as a spiritual kid, as a sensitive boy. And I remember thinking, if I try hard enough, I could bring myself back to ancient Greece, and I could live in ancient Greece where there was room for gay people, and there was a sense of the erotic beauty of being gay as being a real thing, and there'd be a place for me. And I was little, so I really kind of thought if I try super, super hard, I could actually open my eyes and be back in ancient Greece, be in ancient Greece where there would be a place for me, where I would be seen, where there could be love, where there could be sexuality, where there could be a world that had room for me. And I remember being so disappointed when that didn't work. You know, I'm 68 years old. I was born in 1956. It was a different world then, and I grew up in a family of Holocaust survivors and who were amazing, amazing human beings, but had their own trauma and their own defenses, especially my dad, who was tough guy, tough guy, tough guy, motorcycles, dangerous dogs, hunting. He was a tough dude. He rode his motorcycle in a pit of lions on a dare. This was my dad. This is how he survived. It was not me. Anyway, I'm going to fast forward now to high school and finally finding my group of friends. And in this group of friends, there was a lot of connectedness, a lot of joy, and oh my God, so much emptiness. And that kind of craving mixed with emptiness was a hallmark of so much of my life. So there was a lot of drugs. There was some sex, not a ton, although a number of us were beginning to come out of the closet. There was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of kind of scratching the itch, trying to get what I wanted, and it was pretty empty, and it was pretty addictive. And at a certain point in this emptiness, I lost all my friends. The kind of ringleader of our group, who was very charismatic, decided that he did not want to be my friend anymore. He was my best friend. And this was so devastating to me. So I lost all my friends. That was really rough. And it was a kind of lost time for me. But it was a time that I started thinking about my spirituality, which had been an important part of my life since I was like 12 years old. I was meditating when I was like 10 and 12 years old. I would like drag my mom to the bookstores to find books on yoga. And this is like pre-Beatles being into that. So it was kind of hard to find many books on this, but it had always been a passion of mine. So I started kind of thinking about spirituality again, and I was lost. And there was a defining period in my life, and I just want to share the story of what this was with you. I was in the supermarket, and I was walking down the supermarket, and I walked past the vegetable aisle, and there was this thin little guy washing the vegetables, and from all the way down the aisle, I felt his radiance. It was wild. There was humility, there was goodness, there was quietness. I swear to God, I felt that from down this giant, giant aisle. So I thought, I'm crazy, and I kept walking. But I went back because I felt his spiritual beauty. So I went back down that aisle. I was mortified, but I went and I talked to him. I don't know what I talked about. I talked about vegetables. I don't know what I talked about. I was ashamed and embarrassed and awkward. And he was friendly. And I could feel in his voice his goodness, his humility. His name was Bruce. And he changed my life. So I kept going to the supermarket and like talking to him in the vegetable aisle. And it just meant so much to me. But I was so mortified. I certainly didn't think about anything else other than continuing the conversation. And then I guess our conversations continued, and he told me where he lived. I had no friends to hang out with at this point, and I went to his house, and I would just go to his house. And he didn't really know why or what was going on, but he was a really good kid. Anyway, he introduced me to my new life. He introduced me to a commune called The Farm, which was 700 people living in rural Tennessee. They had one giant shower. They grew soybeans. It was like a community of people that all smoked weed, but had a lot of spirituality to them. It was created by Stephen and Ina Mae Gaskin. Anyway, I thought, I'm going to that commune. He also introduced me to a woman named Hilda, who was a spiritual teacher who changed my life. And I'll tell you a lot more about her in a minute, because that was a very wild, wild ride. But he introduced me to a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. And the person who wrote that, whose name is Paramahansa Yogananda, this was 50 years ago, became my spiritual teacher. He had died a few years before I was born, but he was a very amazing, wonderful soul, a close friend of Mahatma Gandhi's, the first yogi to live in the United States for a very long period of time, and a great saint, and the author of Autobiography of a Yogi. Actually, Steve Jobs at his funeral gave everybody at the funeral as a gift a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi. Anyway, there's a picture of Yogananda taken 1 hour before he died, and his face is beaming with love and goodness. He looks like my grandmother, who I loved dearly, and he was radiant. This was taken 1 hour before he died. He always said that he would die talking about God and India. He said he would die with his boots on, talking about God and India. And the way that he died was exactly like that in 1954. He was giving a speech, and he said, I'm going to close with a poem about India. And he read this poem about God and India, finished it, closed his eyes, and sank to the floor. Anyway, this is his last smile, and this photo changed my life. Anyway, he became my teacher, and I began to study his meditation, and still to this day, 50 years later, study his meditations and am on his path. But there's more to say about being gay and being on that path, but I will come back to that. He also introduced me to Hilda, who actually was a student of Yogananda's and lived in his ashram for many years ago. And Hilda then became my next teacher. So Bruce introduced me to all of this. Bruce also changed my life with an insight that led to my being able to find love. But that's not where we are now. We're me being like 17 or 18 and shy and in love and going to his house every day and just being completely mute, silent, like asking him some questions. And finally, one day, he said to me, Ken, I don't mind you coming, but like you come here and we just kind of sit. And I just want to understand like why you come here. I blurted out the truth. I said, I love you. I didn't know what I was saying. Those are the words of my heart that I was moved to say. And he, great guy, wonderful soul, said, oh. And he opened his arms and hugged me. He didn't know I was gay at that point. I didn't know what I love you even meant at that point. But that's how he received me. And we continued to be friends for years. That changed my life. And so I went to find this woman, Hilda. And I went to her services. She gave services, I forget when, I think Thursday nights at St. Luke's in the Field in New York City. And I would go there, and she was a mystic. She was magical. She was beautiful. She was my first introduction to a God that I could really connect to, although I had a period in Israel where I felt deeply mystically connected to Judaism, and I came back wearing a yarmulke, and my teacher was someone named Shlomo Carlbach, and we would dance by the Western Wall, and I swear one night I saw his eyes kind of electric and on fire. So I had these introductions to God, and I felt so in love with spirituality, but just had no idea what to do with it in suburban Long Island. Anyway, Hilda was coming home to me. I learned how to meditate. I heard so much about Yogananda because she studied with him when he was alive and when she was younger. And she opened up my world to meditation. And it was a revelation. And I had left that emptiness and that loneliness and the drinking and the drugs, and I was in a new space. And she opened that up for me. One day, I had a dream of kind of very intense spiritual awakening. And I had Hilda's number. I don't know how I got it, but I called her at home. And she said to me, okay, Ken, so we're going to take you to the next step. I want you to go to such and such a place. It ended up being this gorgeous penthouse on Fifth Avenue. She said, don't talk to anybody. Just go there, knock the door, tell them Hilda sent you. And she said, and by the way, be celibate. So I was thrilled to be celibate because it was like that was the answer to that problem. I didn't have to think about the entire gay thing anymore. And that day I went to this gorgeous, amazing penthouse on Central Park East, I think. And walked in, and the owner of that house, who was so sweet and so warm, and I don't know that I should say her name, but she ended up being kind of a very significant player in the world of Hindu spirituality in New York. Anyway, she was fabulous. She let me in. I didn't say a word. And I sat there. Hilda had met someone whose name was Joya, who was like kind of the new spiritual icon in the New York City spiritual world. She was a Brooklyn housewife who was visited by these kind of visions of God. She's like really a Brooklyn housewife. She had giant eyelashes. She was dripping with makeup. She smelled of perfume. She had 1,000,000 bangles on her arm. She had this fierce Brooklyn accent, and she was supposedly this enlightened being. And people flocked to her from all over the world. All of the people, if you know Ram Dass, the guy who wrote Be Here Now, the great teacher Ram Dass, he went to her and studied with her. His guru told him to study with Hilda, and Hilda brought him to Joya. So it was Hilda and Joya. They were this pair. And Ram Dass, too, was there. I don't remember if Ram Dass was there the first day that I was there, but so I walked in to this beautiful room in this penthouse. It was like the small group was there. It was the group that worked with Joya, her name was, closely. Anyway, it was my turn. And Joya called me up. And she looked into my eyes, and she said 2 things. She said, "You are one of the most beautiful souls that I've seen." No, 3 things. And then she said, "You will see God in this life." And then she said to me, "You need to be more honest with yourself." And then she took her fingernail and she dug it into that point between my eyebrows, which is the kind of spiritual eye, third eye chakra. She dug it in there. And I had this experience. It felt like I was washed from the inside with Brillo. It was the weirdest experience. And it changed me again. And part of the way it changed me was that it made it very scary to meditate for me, because I had these intense experiences that I did not know how to bear. Sometimes I blacked out doing the intense breathing exercises she taught. Anyway, this gal blew me away and scared me, but it was the most amazing meeting. And then I continued to go. And she scared me, and she was really weird. She cursed all the time. People treated her like she was God. She would like just give this poetry would like come out of her of different things that were really, really amazing. But she would say crass things too. She would like talk about like the size of people's genitals. She'd talk about celibacy all the time. It turns out that she and Ram Dass were having sex while she was preaching celibacy. She was a lunatic. And I never felt safe with her. And she didn't like me, and I didn't like her. But I felt like I should adore her, and I felt like there was something wrong with me. So now I was in another environment where I was self-abandoning in these really powerful ways. I was scared to meditate. It freaked me out. She would scream in these meetings with hundreds of people, "Take of the Shakti, take of the spiritual power." And she would do these intense breathing exercises, and I would sometimes pass out. And then she would scream at me, "Ken, get up, take the power, take the power." And all I felt was like, oh my God, I am really pitiful. And I continued studying with them, and my spirituality got scarier and scarier. Meanwhile, things started falling apart. Oh, by the way, I brought my friend Bruce to see Joya. I was like, this is someone really special. You should meet him. And I said the same to Bruce. So I got him into that special class. He came out of it, and I still remember asking, "What did you think? What did you think of this, like, icon?" And he said, "Oh, I don't trust her. I don't trust her. I didn't like her. I don't think she's real. I don't like the manipulation she plays with." And I was like, what? He was amazing, this kid, Bruce. So anyway, she was really pissed that I sent him, because he ended up standing up and he said things about this to her, about not trusting her. And so she was furious at me. Anyway, at around this point, everything started unraveling at the seams. Ram Dass wrote an article called "Egg on My Beard," where he admitted that he was having sex with Joya. while she was preaching celibacy. Hilda said, Joya is a lunatic. She is not healthy. She is not healing. Stay away from her. She is dangerous. Now, they were bonded in the most intense way that I can't even describe. Anyway, my kind of world fell apart. I was really relieved. I liked Hilda, but I had been betrayed by her. I didn't trust her in the same way because she brought me to Joya and told me that I should trust Joya. Joya actually ended up being a guru and having her own ashram. I think that Arlo Guthrie was a disciple of hers at a later point. Anyway, this was like the talk of New York spirituality, this Hilda Joya Ram Dass breakup. And Hilda was talking about Joya being evil, and I stayed away from Joya because she really scared me. But I was lost. At the same time, I started thinking about sex because I had been celibate now for like 2 years studying this work, maybe a year and a half. I started thinking about sex. I was young, and that entire gay part of my life all of a sudden was possible. I started thinking about sex, and I started thinking about meat because I was a vegetarian too, and I was kind of ready for my old life to be able to come back. But I wasn't there yet. Ram Dass started teaching, and so I was still studying under Ram Dass, and there was a beauty to his teaching that blew me away, and I had some dreams, I had some spiritual experiences that were really connected to him. And so I called him. I got his phone number. I called him. And he also told me that he thought I was a very beautiful soul. And he said, you're afraid of your beauty. You're afraid of the beauty of your soul. You're afraid of the beauty of the being you could be, which blew me away. And of course was connected to my gayness, to my longing, to all of these parts of me that I just didn't know how to handle. So I had a private meeting with Ram Dass. And this is a pretty vulnerable experience, but I'm going to share it. I was like, what was I? I was 18. I was 19. I was spiritually so passionate. I had been betrayed by this like cult kind of experience. But my spirituality, my spiritual hunger was really deep. And Ram Dass was it to me. I trusted him. There was a beauty in him, and I didn't trust Hilda in the same way. I trusted Ram Dass. He told the truth and didn't place blame. Anyway, so there I was, and I was seeing Ram Dass, this great, great teacher who I had like revered since I was in high school. And I had a private meeting with him, and he said to me, he said, okay, this time is yours. He said, you can't have sex with me, and you can't hurt me, but physically hurt me, but anything else that you want or need is yours. I'm here for you. So this was completely non-sexual for me, even though it might sound it. And it was with a 17 or 18-year-old or 19, whatever I was, year-old's ardor, spiritual ardor. It was my desire to be completely spiritually naked with him. I took off all my clothes and I rested myself in his lap. And he held me. I think he said like, whoa. He was a little stunned by it, but he got it. He got it. He understood what this was and what it wasn't. We talked, and he said, next time, trust yourself. You didn't feel like it was right with Joya, but you didn't trust yourself. Well, he didn't trust himself either, but, that was not the point. And he said, next time in your spiritual life, trust yourself. So around that point, and I just have one interesting thing to there was another thing too. Yeah. No, I'll come back to that. So that was when I started discovering sex. It's when I went back to college. It's when I started embracing my gayness. It's when I started eating meat again. And I lost my spirituality. I didn't meditate because it scared me too much, because my experiences were too intense, and because I was bitter, and because the world and all these folks taught me that I could not have both. And it was time for sex, and it was time for gay love, and it was time for meat, and it was time for all these things, but I wasn't so happy with those pieces of my life. Sound editor, video editor, I'm just going to pause here for a minute because I got to think. Because I had my spiritual longings, but I had my longings for love, and I had my longings for sex, and I wanted love. And I was not going to get that in the celibate world. That was not just about celibacy, but there was like no room for gay in that. Although I gotta say, one thing about Joya is she always talked about gay people and the importance of gay people in any spiritual community. She was fabulous that way. She actually had parties just for the LGBTQ people, and I went to one and met a lot of the people who I had like read about and heard about, just like being wild at like gay parties. That was surprising. Anyway, I appreciated that one thing about her. I appreciated a number of things about her, actually. But so now it was time for me to enter into a world that allowed my sexuality. And that was the next step in my journey. And that involved the crazy gay world, a new kind of emptiness, another fierce kind of looking, but now looking for love, that led me to a lot of dead ends. And then a reclaiming of my spirituality and a finding love. But that's going to be in part 2 of these stories. For now, thank you for letting me share stories that I've never shared like this before. Video editor, I'm pausing here for a minute. And I want to acknowledge everyone who's listening, who I thank you for listening to my story. And also I want to honor your places of ardor, your places of spiritual longing, your places of longing for love as well. A world that doesn't allow those pieces to come together, especially us LGBTQIA+ folks, where the world does not allow this. And God knows this government now, this administration is trying to shut down our freedom in so many ways as well. A world that doesn't embrace these things. And just to say that our longing is where our gifts lie, even if we have to find out how that's true. And that is the land of core gifts. And my core gifts, looking for love, looking for intimacy, and looking for spirituality, all called me down this ragged, jagged, complicated road that I'm describing, but with a lot of happiness ahead. Thanks so much for listening to my story, and I'd love to hear your comments and your stories. And if you want to get my book, The 5 Keys to Deeper Intimacy, just go to deeperdatinggifts.com. You can get that there and learn more about the work that I teach. Thanks so much for listening.
And that's it for today's episode of Deeper Dating. Be sure to go to deeperdatingpodcast.com, as Ken has a few more gifts for you. Then join us on the next episode.